1976. Marks Thoreau stared at the lovely corpse reposing dull-like inside her glass coffin. The young woman had an eerie beauty, the kind that reminded him of the bad ending in a fairy tale. He tapped his foot, running through all the facts. No signs of rape, drugs, or trauma, no entry or exit wounds, no cause of death, no purse, no ID, no name. Little wonder the sheriff had called the FBI, but Marks wasn't a special agent, just an outcast with a sketch pad and a wooden box of charcoal pencils. The sheriff hoped the case would close before the equinox, or maybe it was the solstice, whatever happened when the leaves turned red. The local wall wanted to publish the woman's face as soon as possible in hopes of reeling in a friend or a relative to ID the body. Nameless headstones spelled bad luck in Stonewall. They were ghosts waiting to happen. But why not just run them more photos, Marks wondered. That would save time and money, but he should have known these Southern gentlemen and their prudish respect for the dead. So here was Marks, all the way from Charleston, sharpening his favorite pencil. The town of Stonewall was tiny by comparison, couldn't even afford its own morgue. The lovely corpse lay upstairs at Stonewall Baptist in their coldest room. Thank the Almighty for air conditioning and airtight containers, although he didn't really believe in God. Neither had his father. He supposed this made him a double outcast. 2 secrets to keep. More like 3 if you counted his rising interest in the woman inside the coffin. The sheriff tugged at his belt loops and nodded. He'd been on Marks's heels for almost an hour now. She wasn't local, we don't think. Otherwise, we'd made contact with some kin by now. Marks nodded. He really wished the sheriff would leave now so we could get to work. Using the sketch pad had succeeded so far, but it would only make drawing difficult. I'm assuming you've already checked the master list, he said, referring to the state's pothole database of missing persons reports. He put his weight on one foot, making the floorboards creak. You've been cooperating with the press? Newspapers, radio, television, this side of the state. We're not Neanderthals. I didn't mean anything personal, Mark said. Just curious. You're not even a real detective, the sheriff went on, just a sketch artist. Marks nodded. You tend to pick things up, though, bits and pieces. From what, experience or something? What are you, 18? 25. Sure as hell don't look at it, said the sheriff. Grow a beard, at least a mustache. You look older. I mean that. You got the sort of face that can handle one. The sheriff used his palm to buff fingerprints off the girl's coffin. A kindness filled his eyes, like he was looking at his own daughter. As far as the master list goes, he said, it's like penning a tail on a mule. 400 people in this state haven't been seen or heard from in a year or longer. It takes a while to sift through. And it spooks you, don't it? That many people just up and vanish? You haven't found any matches, Marks asked. Not one of them panned out? We're still panning, and the FBI hasn't sent squad except some little pipsqueak with a sketch pad. Marks smiled. Squeak, squeak. They looked at the woman, the lovely corpse. Marks tried to will his interest away with little success. She was mesmerizing, but death could only improve anyone's allure for a sick soul like his. Waiting, he thought he saw the girl's eyelashes twitch. The sheriff must have seen too, because he stopped buffing and stared a moment, then backed away. He tried bending his grimace into a smirk. Sometimes that happens. What happens? She blinks. Well, sort of. The sheriff closed his eyes and forced himself into a full smile. This whole thing's making us a mite bit uncomfortable. We saw our fair share of violence, but that's always plain dealing. Fights, shooting now and then, Wild West kind of stuff. This here, well, it ain't even Christian. You know, this case reminds me of that story everybody read back in high school, the one about getting buried alive. Marks watched the woman. He had read the story several times as a kid, daydreaming about his high school crushes buried alive, motionless and pale. This young woman was a gift, and yet so alive. She looked like she might have gone awake any minute. A woman in such perfect condition she might rise up and walk out of the room whenever she wanted. According to what Marks knew of the case file, the examiner had found no decay. She wasn't a ghost waiting to happen. She was already a ghost. He leaned closer, waiting for another twitch, and he waved the sheriff quiet. You hear that too? The sheriff asked. What? She whispers sometimes. Marks held his head near the glass and listened, the hair in his lobe tingling. He heard something, a twist of slithery words, scratching at the inside of the woman's lips. Then the scratching stopped. No, nothing after all, he thought. Just a malicious trick of the wind. You should keep pressing police agencies in the state, Mark said, trying to sound detached. Missing persons reports fell through the cracks all the time. He played with his tie, seeking comfort and distraction in the blue. Honestly, he didn't know why he wore a suit. He could do his job in a black sweater and a beret. He imagined Picasso or Van Gogh as a forensic sketch artist, smoking cigarettes on the edge of a crime scene as they appeared, prepared to trace the path of the murder. Would they have fallen in love with their victims? He wondered. Mark sighed and went to work, realizing the sheriff wouldn't leave him alone with his dark desires. The woman grew in beauty as he sketched. Part of his job in this case was to take away death, rather than revel in its sweetness. But he could still admire. The woman's eyelids were strung shut with a coarse black thread that thickened the lashes, making them look like paintbrush tips. She wore a donated green dress with a neckline that revealed the stitches at the tops of the Y incision across her sternum, as if someone had sewn her together from patches. Autopsy incision marks showed through her makeup, carving a thin line along the edge of her face. He smiled at the scraping sound of charcoal on his pad. Careful craftsmanship could smooth away any trace of dissection. She would live again on paper. Sometimes Marx wondered what the rapists and killers thought of his work. Maybe somewhere in the low country, a convict was sitting on a small cot, staring at his suspect sketch like a reflection as they counted the days ahead. He had drawn a lot of ugly psychopaths over the years, but cute dead girls turned up more often than most people wanted to know. Of course, most people would also prefer not to know that Marx kept a special portfolio of his work from those scenes tucked away in a cabinet. Drawing scandalous pictures of the dead was a definite moral improvement over actually sleeping with them, right? Okay, thank you.